You may want to watch this short video once before you actually begin putting together your book, just to get an overview from start to finish of what the procedure is like. Today we'll be using matte medium for our bookbinding glue made by Golden. There are other good bookbinding glues out there like PVA, but this also is convenient and works well. Some of the other materials you want to have handy will be paper towels, water bowl, mixing pan, brush to glue up with, and then you'll want to have either newspaper or craft paper in the background to do the gluing up on and discard layers of it as you use it. This simply shows the piece of board that's going to be your spine of your book, and then the piece of paper that will be glued to that. Go ahead and glue up the spine, the board, to the paper and press it down. You'll feel when it's drying. Every time you use that glue brush, it would be a good idea to slosh it out in your bowl of water and then squeeze it dry with the paper towels. Go ahead and glue up the paper that you're going to be folding over. When you do glue up the paper, make sure you don't put too much on, because then when you press it against the other part of the paper, sometimes it'll stain through, and you don't want that to happen. Here you folded over that glued up piece of paper onto the other piece of paper that's the spine, and press it down for a minute or so. Make sure it's dry enough so that you can proceed to the next step. Now, glue up, fold over, and press down that bottom piece of spine paper exactly as you had done on the top piece. Over on the left, you have your decorative paper that you're going to use to cover your boards, and this is the outside of the piece of paper, or what the outside of the cover will look. Over on the right, you have the inside of the piece of paper with some of your lines drawn indicating to you where you'll be folding it over. And atop that, you have the mat board that will serve as your cover for your book. This is what the outside of your covers will look like once the decorative paper is all glued to it. This shows up close where on all four sides of our paper we have a 1-inch margin that we'll eventually be folding over. But what we've also added is a little mark 1/4 inch away from where those corners meet. That's where we're going to be cutting the paper so that we will miter it properly. These converge on a dark little triangle that you've drawn there that will make just enough space for when you're folding over, it'll overlap the corner of the board itself also. This shows what the decorative paper looks like after the corners have been cut or mitered in preparation for folding them over and gluing them to the board. Now you're going to glue up your board. Get a lot of your bookbinding glue towards the center of your cover and brush out towards the edges, making sure that you get all of the edges. Don't have an excessive amount or wet amount of glue on there once you've done this. If you do so, you're going to wind up having the glue stain through the decorative paper, and there's nothing you can do about that then. So, kind of a dry look and dry feel to the glued up board before you turn it over and press it down onto the decorative piece of paper. I like to take another piece of paper and put it atop this, just bond paper, Xerox paper, and then rub on it with my fingers thoroughly from the center out towards the edges of the board and the paper so that you get everything pressed down uniformly. Now we'll turn our attention to gluing down the edges of the paper onto the board. Get a good amount of glue on your brush and brush it onto the paper all the way down to where it's touching the board. Don't oversaturate it, don't get it too wet. And then fold it over. Start pressing with your finger from the center out towards the left or to the right, then vice versa, so that it fits very flatly onto the board and there are no wrinkles. Do the same process with the bottom fold, gluing up, folding over, pressing down, making sure there's no wrinkles. Next, do the same thing to one of the side pieces of decorative paper, fold it over, press it down. Do the same thing to your last fold, glue it, fold it over, press it down, no wrinkles. This is how it should look now on the inside of your cover after everything's folded over and glued. Just a reminder as to what your setup probably looked like in doing this, making sure that all along you were sloshing out the brush and squeezing out the excess water with paper toweling. Finally, this is what the inside and outside of your covers look like after you have them glued up. I put these under weight just after they've been glued up so they dry very flat.